Menopause is something that all women eventually encounter, some earlier than others, and for some, the journey is more difficult than others. With me today is a top expert in the field who will help us to understand what's going on when the menopause is complicated and things that everyone can do to make it a smoother, less stressful process. So I'm here with Dr. Anthony Bazzan, Medical Director of the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at Thomas Jefferson University. He's an expert on many things, including women's health, hormonal therapies, medical mysteries, and many more. Dr. Bazzan, welcome.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
So today we're going to talk about menopause. Many women go through menopause and don't have much problem or difficulty, but for others, that's not the case. So help us to understand actually the process of menopause, what it is biologically, and how women should be thinking about that trajectory.
Certainly, when a woman is born, she has a reservoir of eggs that one day will help her make babies. And those eggs, between both ovaries, probably go between 500,000 and 750,000 eggs. You know, nature takes care of business. And then the years go by, and eventually the day comes in which basically she doesn't have any more eggs, or the eggs that are left are no longer functioning. And that's the defining moment of menopause. At that point, the machinery of hormone production in the ovaries has a sharp decline. We could say, I jokingly say sometimes, they retire. And so the ovarian hormones, including all the estrogens, including the progesterone production, including the testosterone production, decline sharply. And hormones are anabolic.
What does that mean?
They build. Anabolism is building, creating, getting something bigger than it was before. Anabolism takes the newborn into an adult body. It's growth hormone and all the other hormones. This is how it's done. And then these hormones stay around for all those years. The average age for menopause in the textbooks is 51 years old, give or take. At that point, that happens. So now the hormones leave. So people should remember that, those tissues, those breasts, the hips, the urogynecological tissues, the vaginal and all that, they're estrogen dependent. This is how they were built. So now you understand why they get dry and thin and they start shrinking when the hormones leaving, because the hormones are anabolic. They're trophic. That means they're building. They keep you there, right? The body's an illusion. If you don't eat, you want to become a skeleton, in 2 weeks, right? So we believe we're here, but there has to be, something has to happen in order for us to continue to be here, right? And that's food and hormones and all that. So at that point, women begin to feel it. And it could be the hot flash, the night sweat. These are usually the early harbingers of what's happening, that the hormonal production declining creates the symptoms, because the tissues now, vaginal, breasts, brain, huge brain, because these hormones work in the brain gigantically. These women come in and say, I have Alzheimer's disease, I can't find my car keys. No, you don't. Your brain's fine. It's just that, that estrogen was needed in the brain, and it's living there too. So, and that's what we always ask when women come to see us. Where are you with the symptoms? And usually they are the first ones to tell us. But the body speaks. That's the most important thing to understand, is the body speaks. When she says, I'm having trouble with intercourse, it's not pleasant. It's chafing, or it's uncomfortable. That's a sign. When she says, oops, I go to the gym and I cough and I sneeze and I laugh, a little, urine comes out, even if I don't mean to. Well, there's another huge sign of estrogen deficiency. So again, the body speaks. And so we listen and we say, okay, now this is proof that you're entering this part of life, which now could be 30 years. And so it's very important to know what to do from now on to keep the body as young and as functioning as possible.
Why is it that some women report that this change from perimenopause to menopause isn't that difficult, and other women really struggle? Is there a difference?
Yes. When it's all said and done, I think that the biggest factor there is their inflammatory state. The whole body inflammation position that this woman is. And it goes like this. The less inflamed, systemically inflamed she is, the easier is the transition into menopause. The more inflamed she is, the more complicated and symptomatic and miserable it is.
I see.
And now that opens the gigantic door into the diet and the lifestyle and the toxicity and, life in the Western world and all that. Which also opens up a lot of possibilities on how to help.
So how that menopausal journey goes has a lot to do with the hormones themselves, but actually a lot of factors outside of the hormones.
Exercise, stress management, life choices like drinking or smoking. All these are extremely important to what kind of menopause symptoms the woman's going to have. The diet, when you get to that age, in the 50s, it's everything. I've been seeing this for the last 30 years. When you get to 50 and up, what you eat will decide what's going to happen to you. Maybe not so much before, because you had power. At 20 years old, we have a lot of power. We can do anything we want. But when you get to 50s, now I tell people, it's time to help out. When you were younger, you took the body and pushed it. Now it's time to be nice to it and say, can I help you? And diets, like the first thing you see if you look at the literature and ask for what is the best diet for menopause, what pops up is the Mediterranean diet, which is now as being defined in the medical literature as possibly the best diet to have across the planet. Another way of looking at it, you could say plant-based diet. But what does that mean? It means wholesome, fresh, nutritious foods that unfortunately are harder and harder to find.
And also a focus on getting plenty of healthy fats.
It's interesting because I say to people, whatever fat you eat, you become. Not so much for protein and carbohydrates, but for fat. Now, what is the brain made of? Fat. What are the nerves made of? Fat. Which kind of brain do you want? Which kind of fat do you want in your brain? Potato chips and cheeseburgers? Brain? Or do you want a brain that functions? So omega-3s are the ones that most come from the fish. They call them fish oils, although they're not, because the fish is not an olive tree. The fish eats the oil at the bottom of the ocean from the algae and then concentrates it in its own body, and then we take it out. So that's not real fish oil, they're omega-3s. Omega-9, the most gigantic example is olive oil, right?
And avocados.
And avocados and all those. These are the omega-9 family. These are the fats you want to build your body with. And people should never forget that the cell walls, every cell is an apartment. And a human body is a condominium with 30 trillion apartments. And these apartments have walls that we call membranes. Which fat makes the membrane makes all the difference in the world. Inflammation, to be clear, is when the body burns. It means fire. The body's being cooked. So now you take everything that you have and you take it through the flames, and you're going to find out pretty quickly what you're made of.
So is one of the reasons that it's so important to be on a low or anti-inflammatory diet and minimize inflammation through other lifestyle factors, is that so important because losing the hormones increases inflammation.
Yes. And that's particularly true when it comes to the androgens. The androgens, meaning the testosterone, and another one that comes out of the adrenal gland called DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone. These are anti-inflammatory hormones. Interestingly is that why do you see in the medical textbooks that chronic systemic inflammatory diseases are always much more prevalent in the women and not in the man, is because we have 20 times the androgen levels that they have. And, they, so to speak, catch on fire a lot faster.
So I think what you're saying, Dr. Bazzan, is that if women do through their lifestyle some of the work that those hormones were doing, it makes the transition so much easier because they're creating the anti-inflammatory effects through what they do with diet and sleep and exercise and all of those things that the hormones were doing for them.
Absolutely. One of the things we jokingly say is, you're the operator, I'm your tech support. So you have your own part to do. If you understand it and do it, that's a gigantic help.
Well, I know in our book, Tapestry of Health, you spend a lot of time talking about this, but for people watching the video, what are your top few things you would recommend to a woman who's now facing menopause and wants to weather that storm as healthfully as possible?
The things we just said. So lifestyle will be exercise is number one. And that would include all three of them. It will include endurance, it would include muscle work and resistance training, and it would include flexibility. If possible, that should be done maybe half an hour a day. And the old Army slogan, be all that you can be, it helps your body, it helps your ovaries to be all that they can be.
I see.
So, the more you exercise, the more blood flow, the more everything, the more you'll give them a breath of life.
So we have the diet that you talked about, exercise.
Stress reduction, taking care of stress with meditation, with prayer, with contemplation, with awareness, with mindfulness is absolutely a huge part.
Because what those things do is they create some distance between you and the stress. I always like this saying of the late, great Lena Horne.
Yes.
Right. It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way that you carry it. We're all going to have stress, but learning ways to navigate it. And one of the things I know that we both have written about is that when you find those effective ways of navigating stress, you also help your adrenal gland, which can give you a little bit of that hormonal balance when the ovaries aren't working anymore.
Absolutely. Adrenal glands, these are the Smurf caps that sit on top of the kidneys. Those are hormone factories. They have 3 different layers, and all they do is create hormones and different types of hormones. And the stress hormones come out of there. Mm-hmm. So when you exhaust your adrenal glands because the stress is finally overcoming your system, that's not good. Because that's when you really have a hard time healing or facing your life. If the adrenal is under stress and the ovary calls and says, I need you to help me here, I need to borrow some testosterone, and the adrenal gland says, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm under fire here. Good luck to you. So these are all things that have direct relationship to the amount of stress that a person is under or able to manage.
Great. And I guess that goes hand in hand then with good sleep, adequate sleep, good sleep hygiene, because that also supports the adrenal gland.
Right. So people should have a clear picture of sleep. When you get up in the morning, who comes out is the day crew. The enzyme, the hormones, these are the day crew. You go through your life, you go to fight your battle, whatever you gotta do. When you go to bed, those day crews, they go to sleep, and the night crew comes out. Different enzymes, different hormones, different circulation. The body rebuilds. So if you miss out on that opportunity, we all know what happens when you deprive people of sleep. If you do that long enough, they actually die. So that's very important to understand that when you want to heal, call it recharge your batteries, that's sleep. And that's non-negotiable.
So this really brings us back to the integrative health approach you've been teaching and working with your patients on for decades. The right diet, proper exercise, sufficient sleep, and stress reduction.
And the right values. Do the right thing. Pick something bigger than you. Believe in a higher power. Help people out. Give something of yourself.
Having meaning in your life.
Yes. Those are, my God. I see it in people who have terrible diseases, who have these things on them. It's almost like half of the load is lifted. And I see the opposite in people that can't do that.
It's a great point and a great place to stop. Dr. Bazzan, thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.